So what's your opinion about the EU? Do you think the Union is strong enough to cope with so many different countries, so many different economies?
Well, the European Union, first, let's get it straight, has always been about creating a centralised European political state, a United States of Europe. That was always intended right from the beginning in the 90s and 20s and 30s when this was planned. But it's always been done in a dishonest and deceitful way, because the people that wanted this project knew that they could not sell it to the ordinary European people at election time, and so they've always pretended it was about economics. Your question is about, can it cope with 28 different member states? Well, obviously it can't, because the EU has this thing of one size fits all legislation for all countries. And of course the most disastrous manifestation of that is the European single currency. Not all European Union members are in it, but enough are in it to show why it doesn't work, which is you can't have the same interest rates and exchange rates for countries as different as Germany and Greece and Italy. So all that's coming apart. The reason why Britain should leave is because it's an economic and democratic disaster for us. It's an economic disaster because, first of all, it costs us billions of pounds every year in direct contributions to the budget. But secondly, it has a damaging effect on the economy. Things like the common agricultural policy, the common fisheries policy, and over-regulation on business put an indirect cost on the economy. And my colleague, Professor Tim Condon, has estimated the current cost is about 170 to 180 billion pounds per annum as a cost on the economy. So if we left, we certainly couldn't get rid of all of that cost because we'd need some regulation of our own, for example, but we could get rid of an awful lot of it and we could actually boost the economy and increase employment and prosperity. Now, the second reason why it's a disaster, the democratic disaster, is in fact, I think, more important, because we now have a situation where most of our areas of domestic policy are under the control of the European Union, and most of our laws now come from the institutions of the European Union. Now, there's a lot of dispute about how much that is, but recently Commissioner Viviane Reding has calculated it at 70% at least. The Germans are the only people who've done a serious study on this, and back in 2006 they said that it was about 84% of new laws come from the European Union. Well, and they questioned in their report, how can you be a functioning democracy if 84% of your laws are coming from somewhere else? So I think that's more important in a way. If you don't live in a country where you control the legislation that controls your own people, if your parliament has surrendered power over vast areas of policy, how can you claim to be a democracy? You're not. You're no longer a democracy.
And what's the UKIP's plan to get the UK out of the Euro? So why should people vote for you, basically?
Well, the whole point of a UKIP MEP, which is the job that I've been doing for the last 10 years, is to talk about Britain leaving the European Union, life outside the European Union. That's our main primary function, which is why you're interviewing me today. We agitate for Britain to leave. We have changed the political debate in this country. We started 20 years ago, and we realised that the only way to move this debate forward was by using the electoral process, and it's just because of the UKIP electoral threat that the other parties have had to start to pay attention to this issue. Even though they're dishonest about it, they've had to make, oh yes, we made mistakes about unlimited immigration as a result of EU membership. Oh yes, we should have a referendum. All of this is phony on their part, but nonetheless proves the fact that they've had to address this issue. So we need to keep the pressure up. We need to get more votes in the European election. But of course the only parliament that can take Britain out of the European Union is our own parliament at Westminster. So our ultimate goal is to win seats in the Westminster Parliament, and we've got a general election coming up in a year's time, and who knows the amount of influence that we can have there with just, 6, 12, 24, however many MPs elected. We can have an influence out of all proportion to our actual numbers and strength. So we don't know how our country's going to leave, but we believe it must leave, and therefore we have to keep up the pressure for that to happen.
So what do you think of David Cameron's proposal for the referendum to leave the EU?
Well, what David Cameron has proposed is something very similar to what Harold Wilson did back in 1975 when he was Prime Minister of a Labour government. Cameron has said, if you vote for my party and give us an overall majority, we will go along to the European Union and renegotiate our terms of membership. Well, slight problem with that in that he hasn't actually said what it is he's going to renegotiate. the European Union itself, in the form of Mr Barroso and Mr Van Rompuy, have said, well, there's nothing to negotiate and we're not going to renegotiate. But nevertheless, that's what David Cameron says he's going to do. And when he's renegotiated that terms, which he doesn't know what they are, he's going to come back to Britain and tell the British people that they should vote for them in a referendum. So I don't believe it'll ever happen, personally. I think he's just doing this to try and counteract the UKIP electoral threat. So I don't think we should pay any attention to that. People who want to get out of the European Union should vote UKIP and elect more people like me who can talk about the benefits of leaving and keep the pressure up on the political establishment.
And I've also read on your book, in Lawyer's Revolution, that the Queen should take a bigger approach into the how to tell people what to do in this country. Do you think she should have more power?
Well, you see, it's not a question of power, because we, contrary to what people say about us not having a constitution, we do have a constitution in this country, but it's in various different places, in various different documents, you know, in Magna Carta, in the Bill of Rights, in various other constitutional acts down the centuries. And one of the key constitutional principles that we live under is that our Parliament, the Queen or the sovereign in Parliament is sovereign. They are the ultimate authority. There cannot be a higher lawmaking authority over them. And of course we have that in the European Union. Now, my view is what the Queen should have done, and bear in mind that the Queen is a kind of physical embodiment of the Constitution. Her job is to protect it. She's only there because of the constitutional settlement achieved in 1688 and enshrined in the Bill of Rights. And one of the things that she's supposed to do is to protect the Constitution. So in my view, what she should have done is to actually refuse to give royal assent to all of these treaties since 1973. She certainly should have refused to give royal assent to the Lisbon Treaty, because that actually created the European Union as its a political entity as such, with the ability to make treaties, enter into international agreements in its own right. You could no longer pretend that it wasn't a political state. She should have then refused to ratify that treaty or to give royal assent allowing it to be ratified, and she should have said no. But she didn't, so I'm afraid that that's where we're stuck, in an unconstitutional state, and I believe we're actually living in an unlawfully constitutional state at the moment.
And your campaign started on the 22nd of April. Can you just give us like a general idea of what's behind the campaign, what kind of things you're using, how it's being financed, what's the reactions been as well?
Well, the campaign's got off to a flying start, because we've been, we planned this a long time in advance, but the big money has only come in very, very recently. Most of the effort is down to our ordinary members giving donations and allowing this to happen. So there's a kind of national campaign which will consist of billboards which are going up all around the country, which are being paid for by one of our wealthy donors, a chap called Paul Sykes. But then in each region of the country there will be leaflets going out to every household. And for example, in London here, which I'm responsible for, we raised all the money ourselves to pay for a leaflet to go out to every single household. So there's that element of the campaign. And then of course, over the next 4 weeks, my colleagues and I around the country will be going out, talking to people, canvassing, doing anything we can, doing media interviews where we're invited to put that message out for the next solid 4 weeks. So there's a lot of different things going on, and we are probably going to have the most successful campaign we've ever had so far, because more and more people are actually coming around to our point of view and realising that we're right.
And what's the reactions been?
Well, the reaction's been terrific, but this has been building up now for the last couple of years, because to start a new political party in this country is extremely difficult. We've had 20 years hard work to actually get where we've got today. And I think we've noticed a real change in the last couple of years, whereby people on the doorstep are agreeing with us. We've got very good results in by-elections, parliamentary by-elections, and now people from all kinds, all different backgrounds are agreeing with us and saying that enough is enough. They don't want their country run by the EU. They're sick of unlimited, uncontrolled immigration. They're overtaxed and they're ignored. The political class don't care what they think, and they want something different, and that's why they're voting for us.
And how involved will Nigel Farage be with this election?
Extremely involved. I mean, Nigel Farage is an extremely energetic and hard-working person. I mean, he works tremendous hours, puts in an enormous amount of effort, and he is going to be working solid 20 hours a day for the next 4 weeks, I think. on this campaign, and of course he'll be wherever he's required. He'll be doing a lot of media work, TV, radio, newspapers, which of course is very important because that gets the message out nationally to all the voters. But no, everybody will be working hard, and I'm sure he'll be working as harder than anybody else.
And just to finish, what's your opinion about Winston Churchill's idea 50 years ago about the United States of Europe?
Well, I think Winston Churchill, and I think it's a bit longer than 50 years now, isn't it? The end of the Second World War, about 60 years, 70 years. Winston Churchill's idea was it might be a good idea for the Europeans to have a United States of Europe and pool their power and sovereignty. But I don't think his idea was that Britain should join, because Britain had always been an international trading nation. I think if Churchill were alive today and he'd seen where the European Union has gone, I think he would change his mind completely, because Winston Churchill was a great believer in parliamentary democracy, and if he could see the European Union, he would see, it has more similarities with the Soviet Union, the old Soviet Union, than it's got with any kind of modern form of parliamentary democratic government. So Churchill wasn't always right about everything, and I think that's one of the things he was wrong about.